Well, I'm so excited to start this episode out with my dear friend and ex-colleague, or I consider you a colleague still, Ashley Drake with Novus. Welcome, Ashley, to Coffee in the Barn.
Thank you, Casey. I'm excited too, and this is much easier to do with somebody that I know and like. So I'm very happy to be here with you.
Well, you made the comment, I'm nervous, and every time I set up interviews and I get to know the person, if I don't know them, I do a pre-interview and things and kind of figure out the direction I want to take the episode. And when I hit record, they're a totally different person. So, and I don't know what it is, but even though you're like not standing in front of 30 or 40 people, that nervousness that, oh my gosh, what I say.
Yeah, it's forever. Like it's there. Yeah, no, I'm usually like I just recently finished an improv 101 course or something to that degree, and I was telling someone about it yesterday, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, how did you do that?" And I was like, "I don't know, it's just fun. I just did it. I'm gonna try 102 now." And they were like, I could never do that." And I was like, "Ah, it's not that big a deal." And then here I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous."
At least we're not talking science today or chicken. Well, we can, but
They're always in the background for me. I can't escape the chicken. So
no. But before we jump into that, can you just give the audience a little bit of background of yourself and how, your journey to where you are today?
sure. So actually, Drake, I'm currently working for Novus International. I'm leading the poultry sales and tech team for U.S. and Canada. Prior to that, when I first started at Novus, I came in as an account manager, senior account manager. I've been with Novus for 4 years. I was real brave and started during the pandemic, May of 2020. So it was interesting. Prior to that, I worked with some lovely people, including yourself at DSM. I held or wore many hats there. Account manager, key account manager, global account manager, a few different things there, and learned some skills. Before that, Anatox and a very small company called Agromet International for 7 years prior to that.
So you
And
have a
oh, good.
longer
Sorry.
career than I thought in the poultry industry.
Yeah, I'm about 18 years in, or a little over.
Well, we don't like to talk about our age, but yeah, we're not young anymore, are we?
No, well, we talked about I have the midlife crisis, purple hair. So
I don't call it a midlife crisis. I think I wanted to bring that up because obviously, I think you've always stood out for your exceptional presence and natural leadership in my mind. And that's why I wanted to have you today because we want to feature women leaders in our industry. And to me, you're one of those. And, you were account manager, and I think at DSM was one of the first where I saw leading like a tech sales team or technical service team with April was really the first time I really saw a woman doing that. I've seen women in marketing or R&D and stuff, but really customer facing. You and April were one of the first ones I really noticed, succeeding in your careers doing that. And obviously you left DSM right or wrong at the same time I did, but from there you've been able to step up in that leadership role. And for the audience, I've gotten to see you as a phenomenal leader, and we'll get into it in a bit because it may be a touchy subject we can't see it, but where I always thought you had that presence, Ashley, but seeing you do that when one of your direct reports was going through the most tragic thing of their life, and what you did as a leader said, oh my gosh, she's somebody that is doing it right. It's not talk. It's like the leader we all need to be, and that is why I invited you to be part of this.
I appreciate that, and to be compared to Dr. April Levy is very very nice of you to do so. So, thank you for that. And in regards to the incident you're talking about, for that to me, it was just being human. Like I can't imagine having gone through what they did, and yeah, I can only be human in those moments. I lost my mother several years ago, and people around me were very good to me, and I remember that. So I don't ever want to be anything but that for someone else if I can.
Yeah. And I think that's important that we showcase that of we came together as colleagues or industry contacts to support somebody who, yeah, was going through, like you said, it's just being human. And I think when we think about that in our roles as leadership and careers, it's human working with humans, even
Oh
though we
yeah,
are animals. So
yeah. It's all about the people. I mean, that's to me. I mean, that's why I am where I am today. It's people and connections and that I've made over the years. And I think that's one of the most important things to always remember as you're going through this. I mean, the industry seems large, but it's not ultimately. And people, you have to connect, and you're not going to get along with everyone, but I don't ever recommend burning bridges or doing any of those kind of things. You can still find something to learn from anyone out there.
I agree. And I think kind of to start out, we have a long background, and obviously we both work or grew up in a male dominated space. What is your point of, I mean, thinking now it's changing. Obviously, we have you in roles, and someday I'm hoping to see you VP of sales at Novus, or would be my goal for you, or to
Mm-hmm.
like I saw her from when she was just account manager. But kind of what do you think? There's a lot of changes happening in our industry
Oh
and
yeah.
changing the guard. And can you kind of touch on that a little bit about a woman working in there and raising, going through the ranks of becoming a higher leader in your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, like I said, I started about 18 or so years ago. I may be telling on myself a little bit here, but when I started, there were very few women in the industry. I mean, there have been trailblazers all the time, and there were women before me, obviously. But I remember going to conferences, and I could count the number of women there probably on two hands. Or a lot of the times I'd go on sales calls, and they would happen to be in the town where I grew up, where my parents still lived, and I'd go out to lunch and it'd be myself and I don't know, 10 men. I'd have to call my mom and be like, if people tell you they saw me with a big group of men, it's just for work. I promise. And the funny part was always getting the bill. Like when they used to come over and to hand out the check, I'd be like, oh, that's for me. So the waiter or waitress was always very surprised. So it was amusing, but I I've been fortunate in this to connect with a lot of good men. I mean, there's good and bad through all of it, and what's really helped me is finding those men who have been extremely supportive of women and of women rising. And I found a mentor pretty early on in the industry, a nutritionist who has really helped put me on the trajectory for my career. He's who helped me actually get to DSM, and it's I attribute a lot to him. I still call him on a regular basis. If I before I made this move to this job, I called him and talked to him about it. I still go over a number of things with him, just because it helps me a little bit to talk things over. But he's been and he's has a daughter as well, so I think that helps him because he's very supportive of her and her move to the industry as well. So that part's very nice. But the thing I think for me is I tried never to shy away from opportunity. If there was a project or something I could try that was new, I mean, I've had roles created for me at a few different companies that didn't exist. And when the company was looking at broadening the way they were doing things, they were like, all right, well, we're going to try this. Don't know if it's going to work, but if it doesn't, we'll figure something out. And so it's scary, but I said, all right, let's do it. Let's give it a shot. And I think sometimes that's been a part that's helped me is just being willing to take that leap a little bit. So I feel like a lot of times when they offer that women some well we have a lot of imposter syndrome situations. And I'll be honest, I was dealing with it for this. When you asked me to be a part of it, I'm like, why would Casey want me to talk on here? But yeah, taking on those type projects and roles and being willing to just kind of put myself out there, I think has helped a lot.
I knew you wouldn't say no, Ashley. So,
Oh, so that was the reason I got to
so
know.
well, no, I mean, you may be feeling that, right? Nervous. And I think that's important to show. And I'd say not only women listen to this, we have a lot of men. And, we say it's two working moms. We're just talking about it from a woman's perspective on this podcast because I
Hmm.
can't deny that I'm a woman. But yeah, a lot of men listen to this. And what I
Hmm.
find really intriguing is there's just as much men who have imposter syndrome today than you realize. And it's everybody facing those doubts and how to connect. And now I have a lot of men even coming to me of, wow, we're the minority now. And in some rooms, in some cases, it is becoming more and more. And you look at the animal science and poultry science undergrads,
Hmm.
it is dramatically changing. And so now I'm having my trusted friends that are men, how do I relate better? So this podcast is to bridge that gap. And I would
Hmm.
say I've had a lot of men mentors that are really important in my career. And I highly recommend that most women do have a higher up man as a mentor because they can open doors for you still.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And perspective, right? We have different perspectives, and it's always great to learn a new one and see it from a different angle too. So I agree.
well, 18 years as a salesperson, that means you've had to give up some things in career choices and sacrifices. Uh, you're not always home. You're on the
Mm.
road. So,
Yeah.
what are some of those choices and sacrifices that you've made to get to where you are today?
I had to. I'm lucky to have a husband who's supportive of it, who doesn't mind being the person who stays at home, and so I'm a little atypical. I don't have children. That was a choice he and I made, but I do have dog and cat. So when I leave, he has all those responsibilities along with his own job. Fortunately, he works from home, so that helps. So I hate to use the word sacrifice for me, but I think as far as choices go, I've missed. I used to do theater, like community theater and things like that. That's how I met my husband. But I had to give all that up because I couldn't do rehearsals anymore. I don't know if I'm going to be home on certain weekends and things. So that was something that I lost that I was a little sad about. The improv now that I'm doing some improv classes, and so I'm enjoying those, and those are a little different. I can take just time here and there, but for me, it was I kind of lived and breathed my job for a long time, and when I started traveling, I couldn't get myself out of the loop of always being on. And so that's something as I've gotten older that I've really worked on is trying to create a boundary there, is letting myself have time away, actually trying to put my phone away. It's only been in the last couple of years I turned off the notification on my for my email on my phone. I thought I was going to die when I did it, but turns out it's quite nice. I enjoy not having that go off every few minutes. So,
That's
but
very interesting. I would say you're a great four-legged mom, and like you're like adopted mom to your, I think, niece. You're like the great aunt that shows all the pictures and everything with your niece. So
well,
like I'm like connected to her life through you.
yeah, I'm blessed to have two nephews, three
Oh,
nieces.
nephew.
Two. I got my brother has a son and a daughter, and my husband's sister has a son and two daughters. So they're on my husband's side. They're a lot older now, so I'm a little less interesting. But I've got a almost 2 year old and an 8 year old, and they still like me on the other side. So
That's
yeah,
so you're like
I
the full aunt that gives them ice cream and sugar and then gives them back.
yeah, and I love sending the gifts and doing the things like he knows to call me. He knows the weak spot. So the 2 year old will learn eventually, but the 8 year old knows. He's like, Ashley, I need this messy jersey. So
Oh
of course he
yes.
has to have it.
My brother's wife Karina is that to my son. I need this. And she sends all the fun gifts and stuff. And I'm like, I'm not sure he needed this, Aunt Karina.
Of course he did. Of course. If he didn't have it, he needed it. And if he did have it, he needed two. So
Well, I think in that last point of sacrifices, we all have that loop. And I mean, I've been there with you, right? 80% travel. Especially when the pandemic hit or things changed at DSM, I didn't know what to do with all my time,
it
right?
was weird.
And now then getting back into it, I'm like, oh, I want to go back to not having to go. But how do you balance that, right? You made a great point. You shut off your notifications, and I've done that too for email on my phone. But what are some of the other things that you do to balance that? Because obviously, it sounds like we've talked about this before. We have great husbands that support us, and their careers help support us as well. But what are some of the other things you do to balance that? I mean, to keep you efficient at work, keep you efficient at home, things like that when you can't be there all the time.
Well, for in my current position, I have a wonderful team that I work with. I have three salespeople, two tech people. They all have a great deal of experience, and I trust them. I mean, they're my team. They were the specific people that I believed in to be able to do these jobs. So I don't worry about them representing. So I'll give an example. Next week, I have to attend some internal meetings. I'm unfortunately not going to be able to be at Arkansas Nutrition. I know it makes me sad, but there were some things I needed to get done, but I passed it on to Bob and said, hey, can you take care of this? These are the things that need to get done. Can you please, meet up with some folks and make sure you pass along this information? And I mean, I trust that he's going to handle it and handle it, you know, possibly better than I could to handle it. So, that I've really tried to pull myself back from having to attend everything. I try to pick and choose now what makes sense because I have to attend a lot more internal things than I used to, and I have to do a lot more computer work and reports and all those good things that we all love. But so that's the part I've done. I love to go and do everything, but now it's just not feasible. So being able to lean on my team and know that they're there representing has been phenomenal for me.
And I would agree. I finally have, taken my business like this is going to be a real deal, Casey. This is not for fun anymore. And I'm building the team and relying on them. And it's important to have a good team behind you. And I was talking to somebody else just the other day, and they're like, yeah, it's better. It's a risk that you give your team all that responsibility, but it's actually better because they grow. You
Hmm.
can do more, right? And I've learned kind of what that is of having the right team and support and realizing that I'm not superwoman. So,
Well, and at one point you were that, potentially that team member that somebody had to rely on. So,
yeah.
you think about what you learned and how it aided you as you continued on. And if they hadn't trusted you, I mean, working under micromanagers or people who just don't seem to trust you, it never feels great either. So, and for me in my position, if I didn't believe in my team, I couldn't function. So it's, I would call myself a control freak, but I have really learned that when you have the right people in place, then it doesn't feel like you're out of control then.
No. And you made some good points on that of delegation as a leader, but in sales in general, in our industry, you have some very high wins, like really high points, and very low points. Kind of talk us through that you've had in your career and how do you handle that roller coaster of the sales?
I would say I handle it a lot better now with my age has come some clarity and through therapy and other things of that nature. But when you're working with large integrators like we do, you one day can be up several $1 million and the next day have lost it. And I've been through both of those um, or situations. The losing part I mean, it hurts. And then you go through a piece in your mind. You're like, oh my gosh, how will I ever like dig myself out? But you have to tell yourself, I I did this once. I managed it. I got there. I can do it again. It's just putting the work behind it. And it's hard to sometimes climb that hill again. But that's for me. That's kind of how I've gotten through it. And I live on my wins, and I really live on my team wins too. Like if a colleague has done super well, like for me, I embrace that too. And these days having employees, like their wins just really like uplift me. And so I think that's been part of it too, is just trying never to be totally in my own mind, and to kind of just spread things out and realize I'm part of a team. This is not solo. We're all working together to try and do something. So if I'm having a bad day, maybe, teammates having a good one, let's live through that happiness, and then we'll worry and focus on my issues the next day.
I think that goes into a little bit. How do you manage expectations with people above you on the sales process? Because everybody wants sales tomorrow. And in our world, I have to try to tell people it's a 1 to 2 year sales cycle.
Yes. And I think that is one of the most constant parts of my job now. And one of the things that it, I try to make sure I handle, because I don't want my team to feel that, or to have that pressure or that niggling on them all the time. So, I mean, it's a constant situation, because the market changes, customers change, there's different things happening all the time. So, and as we bring in new products or grow our portfolio, or lessen our portfolio, I have to explain, okay, so if you're bringing in this is the situation in the market right now. If we want to change it, it's going to take time, and it's going to take research, and we need to work with these individuals to try and help us. It's always a learning experience, because especially if the people above you haven't worked with, again, large integrators, it's a new world. And luckily, it's one that I've been in for a long time, so I understand it, and can speak to it pretty well. And sometimes they don't necessarily always agree with you at first, but I think if you remain diligent and show what your work is, show what you're doing, then they usually come around most of the time. So that's been the way I do it. It's consistency.
Now, in DSM, we had some different programs to help us develop on our career path. And every corporation I've been in has had different opportunities for young people to, and stars to shine in different things. Kind of what is in place, I guess, from your experience, or things that have worked that you think will help women get into the leadership roles in the future within maybe Novus, or like past things that you really liked to really
Yes.
help us become those leaders that we want to become?
So this is exciting for me. I like part, because we have such an amazing program at Novus right now going on. I'll lead up to it, but mentors are always fantastic. When you come into Novus, you are immediately given a mentor who's your manager once removed, and they're there to kind of help you get into your day to day and understand things. And so it's not your boss, but your boss's boss, but they're a very good source of information and aid. That usually trickles off after a while, because a lot of times these guys they have 80 people answering to them. So for me, I sought out I seek out mentors, and I personally sought out a female mentor here at Novus, and she's in a completely different part of the business than I'm in, but her trajectory and her growth has been really phenomenal, and I really enjoy talking to her and learning and gaining perspective. And so for us, it's been a really good piece. I mean, she doesn't do much on the sales front line, so she enjoys hearing like what's going on, how do we do this, and hearing what we're doing. But specifically as a program at Novus, we have on the poultry side a program called the Flock, which we started 3 years ago. Um, and it was a small, or it was an idea that several of us were talking about. And then one of my tenacious employees, she said, "We're going to do this." And she worked with another woman who'd been with Novus a long time, one of her colleagues, and she really helped her understand how to push the business case up the ladder. And as a result, we have this amazing program. And basically, just to kind of give you the basis of it, when the project charter was written, it talked about creating and fostering an open dialogue in the poultry industry, focusing on empowering women through leadership. We're hoping to, or we look to facilitate roundtable discussions relative to the industry, but also to our professional and personal selves, and really creating a safe space for women to talk about things, because sometimes just having, you can be a little more vulnerable, a little more open when you're amongst peers, in the sense of, again, women, or other mothers, or, again, I'm not a mother, but so many of my colleagues are, and they're amazing, and the things that they do just astound me. So we started this program 3 years ago, and it's basically, we started it as a retreat. We spend 2.5 days. We rent like a Airbnb kind of thing, so we have everybody together all the time. But we have speakers come in to discuss some industry things, but they're all female speakers. We always have someone from the academic world come in, and we ask them to bring one of their PhD or grad students with them, so that that woman can go ahead and start networking and connecting, and hearing that she's not alone, that like some of these things and thoughts floating through her head, hey, these women who have been doing this forever are hearing and feeling the same things I am. And I think that's the thing that comes out of it most. We every year is hearing how many people say, "Oh, so nice. I'm to know I'm not alone in this. Like, I'm not the only one going through it. I'm not the only one dealing with it." So that has been phenomenal. The retreat is always our biggest piece, but we try to hold events at various conferences and stuff too, because a lot of it is the continuous connection, and being able to have that moment where, again, a vulnerable moment, if you need to talk about something, it's not necessarily, oh my gosh, I had this horrible run-in with a customer. No, it's, oh my goodness, my kid couldn't go to daycare today, so I had to do this, do this and cancel, and it's been rough. Or whatever happens is happening in your world, and just being able to go through that and have somebody who can empathize and talk to you on the same level has been really amazing. And we try to pull in topics. We started early with like some imposter syndrome talks, and last year's or this year's was burnout, which for me was perfect, because I've been there, and now being able to understand what leads up to that is really good, and identify so I don't hit that point. And knowing that, like, I mean, we can talk about things like our mental health. How often, I mean, in the ag industry, or really any industry, do people feel comfortable talking about things like that? I'm a little more of an open book than maybe some people would appreciate.
No, not at all, Ashley. Not at all.
I pretty much lay it all on the table. But as they say in the South, we put our crazy out on the front porch. So why not? But it has been, not only for me, but I'm watching a lot of women connect and network. We bring people in from all across the industry. So they may be management, they may be nutritionists, veterinarians, procurement. I mean, just it's a very rounded group of women. And so they all bring in different perspectives and can talk, and they may never have met before. I mean, some of the procurement people don't necessarily get out of their offices and get to meet the sales or nutritionists and stuff. And so they're creating a network that they didn't have before. And again, with the students coming in to do that as well, it's just, I've seen some phenomenal things occur. So that Novus supporting us in that, and then we have support all the way up to our CEO with that. So it's been a really great opportunity, and they actually began it on the swine side the year after we started, and so we have a program called WISE, Women in Swine Events, that Taylor Schminke is the lead for. So it's also done very well. So I cannot say enough about the support that Novus has given us in that regard.
No, and I mean, when I started my journey and putting the thought out there, the ideas, it was pretty risky. And now I see you guys, obviously, I wanted you to touch on the flock and then what you guys do on the swine side. But Zimpro hosted that event this summer for the swine. And they have, it was built so they can take it out into multiple species. And doing the mentorship with students and regardless of gender on that. And the mentors, I still have mentees that call me, right? So I have a select few that I'm on their speed dial and I'll always be their mentor and keep up with them and help them. But people need to know it's okay to ask those questions. And I would say 10 years ago, I didn't feel like the only thing I could talk about was, what's your thoughts on this SID amino acid ratio, Brad?
Yeah.
And then, right or wrong, he said something that he probably not should have said as a manager, but it was probably more how he positioned it because he meant well with his comment as a male boss. And, now I look back and I'm like, imagine if when we started our careers, if we could have had these conversations, where you and I would be even today, right?
Yeah. And really, yeah, my trajectory has, I won't say it exceeded my hopes or expectations. I mean, this is the direction in which I hope to go, but I think it even happened a little quicker than I anticipated in some ways. And I'll give as a funny anecdote, talking about working with students and mentoring. I've had the opportunity to go and speak at a few different classes, at different colleges, where it's either, I mean, it can be undergrad, grad, PhD, and just not discussing scientific pieces because that's not my area of expertise, but just discussing what we're talking about right now. Networking, connecting. How to really get yourself out there in the industry. And I had a gentleman come up to me, one of the students. He was an undergrad student at a PSA 2 years ago, and he was like, "Hey, you're that girl or woman who doesn't have a master's. You only have a bachelor's, and you're leading a team, right?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, that does, describe me. I guess you're right." He's like, "Yeah, I want to be like you." He's like, "I don't want to have to do school anymore. If you can do it, I think I can do it." And it was an amusing moment for me. I mean, it was a little of a moment of like, really, I'm having an impression like that, and two, like, wow, how often are people thinking about what my degrees are? And I joke and I'm about it a lot, but yeah, I mean, I have a bachelor's in business, so I fell into the poultry industry. So my dad worked for an integrator, so that's how I kind of got to know people. I started networking before I ever even knew that some of this existed.
Yeah, it is so awesome, and I love how you brought up all these initiatives, and I knew I was going to be able to intertwine that to get you there. But to me, like working with you, you're a joy to have on a team. Um, I have not worked for you, but I've worked with you, around you, and I've seen you lead your team and things. And the saying is, people leave a company not because of the company, but because of the leader. Talk to us a little bit on workplace culture and, even the diversity piece of how does that play? Because in the poultry industry, you work with a very diverse set of individuals. You saying, I only have a bachelor's degree, you have to work with us science nerds with PhDs and keep us in line to say, no, what does this mean to the sales target? to, we have different religious people that we work with, to different countries and different languages. And like, how do you manage that as a leader? How do you embrace that? And how do you, I mean, you create a culture of trust. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that culture of trust with your kind of team and the people you work with.
Yeah, and I think you said it. I mean, you have to fully embrace it. So and just be cognizant. Again, I think the way I look at it most of the time, and I know I'm probably limiting what this really means, but I still try to just be human and like how would I want to be treated? How would I want to be spoken to? And everybody has different personalities. We do a ton of those personality quizzes and different things. Um, we've done all the colors. I'm a sunshine yellow. Um, Surprise. Uh, but it's really learning. I do have coworkers or employees or colleagues that are less boisterous than I am. So I try to, when I can, to tone things down. But I think that having the opportunity to be surrounded by all the different cultures and different religions, different people, like it's kind of an amazing experience and something that instead of being scared of, just you should jump into it and try and learn as much as you can. So, for me, I'm learning Spanish right now because though English is the official language of Novus, I have a ton of Spanish speaking coworkers, that work in LATAM or in Europe or wherever, and I want to be able just to make them feel comfortable and talk to them. So I'm trying, and they have been so nice to like really deal with my terrible, terrible way of being so slow and speaking. But they love to help. I mean, they realize that I'm trying to reach out and do something. And the same goes, I'm very polite in Portuguese. I've learned a few things just so I can, at least say good morning, good afternoon, and thank you. It's just small things like that sometimes can mean a whole host of things to somebody else. You never know what's 100% going to connect with someone. But for me, I think having worked for at least three global companies now in my career, it has been amazing for me to learn the different things. I mean, I can call up my colleagues in Europe, my colleagues in South America, and ask questions and maybe learn something that I can utilize here. So it's for me, it's not a. I don't consider it a challenge. I consider it kind of exciting.
Well, yeah, and that's why I've always had this challenge. I want to learn and new cultures, new people, new ideas. Oh,
Hmm.
I love to learn. So I eat that up. But I do know it's a challenge for some people and it's a challenge for some companies to manage. And luckily we have leaders like you breaking the barriers, and you'll get a kick out of this. So I finally hired so there's two of us now that English is our first language on my team.
Hmm.
But everybody else, English is their second language. And the dynamic of the team when they're speaking in Spanish to each other, and when I and now they're, well, we do it to be polite to you. And I'm like, but you guys sound like you're having so much fun.
Hmm.
And I'm like, be yourself. And said, well, maybe you guys need to start teaching me more Spanish. I mean, I can get by in that, but I'm not fluent like them. And they have to slow down if they're going to talk in Spanish with me. But I'm just like, bring that fun into English, please, because don't feel like you can't talk to Spanish and make me try to pick it up. And if I'm not getting it, I will tell you. But I've always embraced that opportunity to learn new things and meet new people because I think it's so important.
Oh, 100%. And I think that's a show of respect too. Looking at it, that's also a huge piece of it is just respecting people in general. And I grew up in a very strict household. Both of my parents fathers were former military. So I grew up in the yes sir, yes ma'am, no sir, no ma'am, situation. So yeah, there's that type of respect, but there's also just respect for who people are, and I think that we just need to constantly remember, we want to be respected. Let's respect them as well. And my thing with the Spanish these days, I know enough to where every now and then, if they're talking, I can be like, I know what you just said. You just said, something about a cow. You talked about cow and milk, and you were doing this, and they'll be like, oh, she is learning. So, they know. At least they can't get away with saying something too bad about me without me knowing.
I know. I always pull that card out and start speaking to them. They're like, oh, yeah, crap. We forgot she knows some Spanish. And it surprises people every time I do it that don't know me well, that I can pick up what they're saying and answer them in Spanish. And they're like, where'd she come from? But no, one last question, because this has been amazing. And knowing both of us, we could talk forever. What's one piece of advice that you would give your younger self or others just starting in their career?
As I mentioned it before, I've struggled with, I guess, the imposter syndrome forever. The fact that my degree, I mean, my team, every single one of them are much higher degreed than I am, or more educated, and I've at times let that bother me. But I think I would tell myself, and I continue today to tell myself this, is it doesn't matter. I've been working in the industry for 18 years. I have on the job experience. I've taken on these like great mentors that have helped me learn and know things. I can't speak always at the same level as a PhD nutritionist, but I can talk for a little while about at least the pieces I know. And when I don't know, it's just easy for me to say, okay, well, hold on, that one I don't know. Let's hand it over to my tech person, and that's why they're here. And understanding that is not a negative, that it's okay. Like, I have my place, and right now I feel very good in my spot, because I think that supporting people, supporting a team is maybe something that I say I'm actually good at. I hate always, I'd never like to give myself credit for anything, but I like it, and I live for their success, and trying to always give them an opportunity to succeed. And so I would just tell myself to realize that, yeah, you may not have all of that, but there are things that you can do and you're good at and that you excel at. So focus on the strengths, not on the weaknesses.
Well, that is a great piece of advice. And I was going to say, you do belong here, Ashley, and you are a great leader. So you're on the podcast. So
yeah, but like you said, you knew I'd do it.
Yeah, I knew you would do it. I knew you wouldn't turn me down. But then when you copied Elizabeth on it, I'm like, all right, I've worked with Elizabeth before on some marketing stuff. What's she going to require us to do?
She was excited. She was like, just go be you. And I was like, all right, this could be interesting.
One last fun thing. I know we are all serious. What is one thing that you have to have in your suitcase that's always with you when you travel? Or bag?
So amusingly, these days, liquid IV. I am known as the woman who has, like, I'm really the pharmacy, literally. Like, one of the college professors that I know sent one of her students with me at IPPE last year. She's like, I know you're not feeling good. Go see Ashley. Ashley will have something to help you and make you feel better. So really, for me, it's, I guess, my pharmacy, which includes liquid IV. But I am a full believer. If you have especially at my age these days, if you have a few drinks at night, you need to have liquid IV, ibuprofen, and some form of antacid. So I'm always handing those out to everybody. I'm like, here, just to be on the safe side.
Well, see, we do like to have fun. And Ashley, it's been amazing to catch up. Thank you for being on Coffee in the Barn.
Thank you so much for having me, Casey. This has been wonderful. It's good to catch up with you too.